Hey guys, uh, thanks for having me. This is great. Good to be with you. Um, my my story is kind of interesting because a couple years ago, some friends and I decided to come over to Europe and backpack around. But I was the backpack, which obviously caused some heads to turn, and so people assume that my story started there, and some people ask a lot of questions about that. But the funny thing is, it actually started back before I was born. Um, my parents had two children before me, and their second is named Connie. And Connie, when she was about the age where she should start being able to walk on her own and let go of the furniture, she didn't. She just kept holding on. And when she did, she would fall over. And so my parents took her to the doctor, and that began several months of testing. And after a while of testing, the doctors came back with a diagnosis. And the diagnosis was for spinal muscular atrophy, which essentially means that the message between her brain and her spinal cord gets kind of jumbled up. And so the message doesn't get to her muscles properly, and so her muscles atrophy over time. And so the doctors brought my parents into a room, and they were explaining all this, and they said, if you have more children, it will probably be the same story again. And this is already going to be a difficult enough life for you and for your children. So we would just suggest that you not have any more children. And my parents are very good at loving people, and they do it in two very different ways. My mom is a fighter. She's kind of the firecracker of the family. And my dad is kind of the quiet, behind-the-scenes one. But my dad was the one to speak up. And in that room with these well-meaning doctors, he took my mom's hand and he said, well, if what you're telling us is that the worst that can happen is that we have another child like Connie, that's perfectly fine with us. And about a year later, I showed up. And just as the doctor said, it was the same story about the age where I should start letting go of the furniture. I was already falling down. I never really got to that stage of holding on to things. And, so life went on, and I was diagnosed, and my parents decided that they had 3 children, 2 of which had this rare disease, and that was fine with them, and they were going to raise us as normal as possible. What that meant for them was that we were going to have extremely adventurous lives. And so we grew up traveling and inviting people into our homes and going out into the world and being, although we were disabled, we were completely a part of the able-bodied community. And it was just a really wonderful experience that I didn't fully understand the power of at the time until I grew up and moved out on my own and realized that afforded me the ability to interact with everyday life just as a normal person, right? As if any of us are normal. And what that meant was, well, I'm not living with my parents now. I have to have friends help me. And that kind of became my life, is inviting people into my home and going out into the world and just kind of melding all that together to where I had the help that I needed, not inviting people in to help, but inviting people in to be a part of my life, and realizing that if we wanted to experience this life together, then this is how it had to happen. And so for the past about 12 years, been living on my own and having friends take care of me. I think out of the, I was doing the math recently, out of the let's say, 65 people that have helped me over the past 15 years. I think one of them might have been a trained nurse, maybe two. So most of them are musicians, and that's kind of a fun side note. But almost all of them are nerds, so that's also fun. But yeah, that's just, it's my friends and it's my community, and because of that community and these friends, I get to live a normal life. Not only that, but I get to live a full life. And so about 3 years ago, 4 years ago, wow, time flies, right? About 4 years ago, some of those friends and myself decided, you know what, we want to try and do something without my wheelchair. Because we would go and have potlucks at each other's houses, and some of those had stairs, and I couldn't get into the house, and so we would just leave my chair outside. And so we thought, well, what if we actually had an adventure where we intentionally left my wheelchair behind? And we decided, because we grew up on Batman and Ninja Turtles, that we would go into the sewer system, because that's not handicap accessible at all. So I found myself laying one night on my friend's coffee table with a metal frame underneath me from a old hiking backpack, and we took some hammocks and wrapped them around me and kind of came up with this very makeshift backpack. And we went into the sewer system. It was two friends, Tom and Philip, and then a couple other guys helping out. And for a whole evening, we climbed through pipes that were probably too small and way too filthy to be in. We sloshed through water up to our shins, and found out later on that there were spiders that I couldn't see, but they could. Glad I didn't know that. Almost got my nose ripped off by concrete at one point. It was, your average fun weekend with some buddies from school. And about a year later, we started asking ourselves, well, what else can we do? If we can pull that off, if we can survive, what's next? So that's when we decided that we would do the same thing, but above ground, for 3 weeks in Europe. And we proceeded to come up with a better backpack. Thought that was a good idea, because I wasn't going to live for 3 weeks in a hammock. That was going to be uncomfortable. So we came up with a better backpack, and Tom and Philip, and then a couple of other guys, Ben and Robbie, and two filmmakers, all came together from all over the United States, and we met up in Paris, France, in the summer of 2016. And we had filmmakers to provide proof that what we actually did happened, because it was so completely absurd to us. So that's kind of the backstory of a documentary that we ended up making, and we would like to show it, if that's all right. Does that sound good? Cool. I was born with a disease called spinal muscular atrophy. I'm supposed to sit in a wheelchair, take supplements, and maybe work on a computer. But instead, I let a bunch of medically unqualified musicians put me in a backpack and carry me around the world. France to visit the home of Django Reinhardt, England to explore the world of Kensington, Ireland to brave the island of Skellig Michael, and then plenty of wiggle room in there for adventure to find us, if she pleased. And yeah, it was bound to hurt, but I'm alive. And I've seen the world as we all were meant to see it, big and beautiful and full of life. Nothing was
was out of reach.
There's no post-credit scene, sorry. Not this time. But yeah, something that I really loved about the whole experience was that every turn that we took, we never had to worry about what was accessible, what was wheelchair friendly, quote unquote. And that was all because of the people that were with me, and not only their physical ability to carry me, but also their creativity and their willingness to be creative with how we would pull things off. And so since then, we came home from the trip, and we had such a response from people asking, like I said in the film, about the backpack and about traveling. Where did you get these friends? You know, I grow them in my backyard. No, but we wanted to give a proper response to that, and so we started a nonprofit called We Carry Kevan, and we've been speaking, sharing our story for the past few years, but we've also been working on providing practical application for people. And so what that looks like is we went back to Deuter, the company that we built the backpack with, and we said, hey, what if we tweak this to be more adjustable for more needs and more people, and so they've been working with us on that, and we're actually going to go into production in the spring to be able to provide it on the market, which is really exciting. In the meantime, we've been able to work with families individually and kind of set them up with backpacks. And you know, the backpack works for some people, it doesn't work for others, but the principle behind it, which is thinking outside the box and also people helping people as true accessibility is really the key behind it all. And so that's kind of what we're running with. And so some people, we work with them on developing a backpack for them. Some people we just meet with and talk with and help them come up with other ideas. And then we're also introducing people to each other. There's a family that we worked with. We got them a backpack for a trip out to the Rockies because the Rocky Mountains are not handicap accessible. And this family went out there with their 6-year-old son who has cerebral palsy, and his dad got to carry him up onto peaks that they would never have otherwise been able to experience as a father and son. And that was really special. But when they came home, I ran into the dad one day at a coffee shop, and he said, well, we're actually planning to go to New York next year and do some camping, but then go into the city. Do you have anyone in mind that we could meet up with and maybe they could help carry? And I had just heard from a guy in New York City saying, hey, if you ever come, I'd love to help carry. So we connected them and said, well, I'm not coming, but there's this other family. Turns out the guy works for the NYPD, and he had like this whole group of police officers that wanted to help. And so they got like this just awesome treatment while they were in the city and got carried around by police officers, which is pretty cool. And they just got back from that trip. So that's kind of just a microcosm look at what we're doing on a larger scale. And so connecting people and providing backpacks and other means of accessibility outside the box. Yeah, we also just got back from China, which was really cool. Again, coming back from Europe, we thought, well, what's next? What's the next big adventure? So that's what we did. We went to China and spent some time in some care centers that are for orphans with disabilities, and provided some backpacks, but also just hung out and played with the kids, rolled around on the floor, which is what it's all about, so at the end of the day. Anyways, it's an ongoing adventure. It's a great life to live, being able to do something as crazy as this just for ourselves, for fun, and then realizing how we can give back now, and that it's about a lot more than just a couple of guys having an adventure around Europe. So we have a few minutes if there are any questions.
Just out of curiosity, did you go with the same guys to China?
So it was about half the same group, yeah. So on this trip we had 7 of us, so 4 carriers, 2 camera guys, and myself. In China we had 3 carriers and 1 camera guy and a translator, which was very important. But also with that, we ended up, because we had fewer carriers, and it did, I would say it ended up proving to be a physically more taxing trip, because the Great Wall, Is there a period. Not yet. We're working on that. But with that, because we had fewer carriers, we actually, as we met people and interacted with people, we invited them to carry as well, which was kind of cool. So the more the merrier. That's what we say.
Do you have any big adventures planned next?
Oh, well, I mean, we're here in Ireland. So, no, we have a few ideas of different places we would like to go, kind of along the same lines. Now the big thing right now is speaking and interacting with families. That's kind of become our new adventure. But as far as our next big trip, it'll probably be a few years, but we've talked about doing a camping trip in New Zealand, like actual tents and, that sort of thing. But we've also talked about going to India and doing some exploring there. And yeah, we have some different ideas. So we'll see. The big thing is, with each trip, we kind of look at what we would like to do, and then we see what doors open, and then we go through. We wanted to go to China. We knew that at the end of the Europe trip, and it wasn't until probably like 8 months later that we just met the right people and doors started opening, and so we decided to actually go.
I have one more question. Based on your experience and your family, what would you recommend to parents who have small children with SMA? Like some best practices, like what do you think your parents did really well?
Oh man, no, that's a big question. I've had a lot of conversations with my parents over the past couple years, because I've met a lot more families with disabilities, and I've kind of sat down with my parents and been like, what do I say to these parents? I'm the kid, I'm not the parent. And yeah, and my parents, they, like I said at the beginning, they kind of raised us to be, they raised us as normal as possible, which took a lot more work for them, but it was definitely well worth it in the long run. Also kind of realizing that the people around you aren't going to get it fully, but that doesn't mean that they don't care and that they won't help out. And so inviting people into your life, into your home, is a big part of it. It's going to be uncomfortable, but it's also going to be really rich in the end, for them as well as for you. So, yeah. That's a little bit, Usually when I interact with families or parents, it's a few hours of really getting into the meat of it, but that's a bit.
Kevan, I have a question for you. So apologies for what happened on the Irish motorway. It gave us an insight, though, into your mental strength and your resilience.
My mental strength and resilience.
Can you talk to us a little bit about that and
sure.
Where you developed that?
Yeah, I would say just like the physical strength that the guys provide to me, I would say emotionally and mentally and spiritually it's the same, in that we kind of have a joke that people are like, "Oh, you're so brave." I'm like, I have to be brave for like 5 seconds to say, "Sure, why not?" And then I can be yelling at them the rest of the time. "What are you doing? Why are we doing this?" And I'm on their back. What am I supposed to do? I think that's the thing, is having these friends that not only carry you, but in the morning when you're like, I just don't feel like getting out of this bed, and they literally get you out of the bed and keep you going, and we have a lot of conversations, a lot of very open conversations about how we're doing emotionally with things, and so we kind of carry each other through that, and that, I think that's pretty applicable whether you have disability or not. We all need people in our lives that can speak life into us and speak truth into us, and we can do the same right back. And so I would like to say that I'm this brilliant person with this great constitution to forge the way, but I could not do a single thing on my own.
A question on the community that now is kind of a naturally building since you started it, and now a lot of people would reach out to you to ask for advice. Are you planning, or it's already work in progress, to build like a proper online community, like Couchsurfing it was, for example, or something that people can, they know that it exists and they kind of ask questions or reach out, and like a proper online community?
Yeah. Oh, I don't want to get in trouble because we're at Google, but for me personally, I've found there are a lot of like support groups for parents who have kids with disabilities or individuals with disabilities, and there are a lot of support groups online, but what's really, I would say, lacking in our culture right now is people actually having that face-to-face and interacting. And so we are definitely going to provide information online and provide a lot of resources, but something that we're working on right now is developing weekend events all over the world eventually. We'll start with one. But weekend events that for now will center around the backpack, but hopefully we'll open up more, and it will be families with disabilities and able-bodied people who want to be involved but don't know how. And so kind of breaking down those barriers, an icebreaker, dinner party, You bring these friends and these friends because you're the mutual acquaintance, and you say, hey, you guys would get along great, and you put them in a room together. So we want to do that everywhere, and just introduce people, and also promote the concept that you might be coming to help, or you might be coming because you need help, but these are all people involved, and people need friends, and people have feelings, and people need support on both sides. And so kind of hopefully speaking some truth into that, because it is easy to fall into that kind of categorizing yourself of someone who needs help, and so you're here to help me, and I don't care about your feeling, or my needs are more important than yours, or vice versa. And if we can just kind of build relationships around friendship first and foremost, then I think a lot more gets done, and it's a richer experience for everyone. So that's what we're working on. Yeah.
It's a lovely note to finish on. Thank you very much, Kevan, for being here today, and to your team.
Yeah, thank you.